Howdy folks, and welcome to part 2 of my KanonenJagdpanzer review, or as I'm calling it, the KanonenPanzer, because I have no idea if I'm pronouncing the name correctly or not, although I suspect that by the time the comments section comes to life I'll find out one way or the other. As I mentioned in the first part of this review, the reason I'm splitting it up into two parts is to try to keep the file size of my video uploads below 1 gigabyte, as this seems to be the root of the problem that we've been experiencing over the course of the last week with choppy frame rates on my typically quite long videos. So I guess we'll find out whether or not this has worked. Anyway, on with the review. So to recap, for the benefit of those of you who skipped the first part of the review, which consisted of all the theory crafting in the garage, and I'm sure there were some of you who skipped out on that and just jumped straight in here to the action, what we've so far discovered about the KanonenPanzer is that it has very, very good speed and maneuverability, abysmally bad armour, the power to weight ratio is good but not especially good, and the 90mm gun produces the worst DPM of any of the Tier 8 tank destroyers, and significantly worse DPM than any of the premium Tier 7 tank destroyers. The ISU 122S, for example, has almost 1000 DPM more than this machine, and it's only Tier 7. But there's only so far you can take the theory crafting. At the end of the day, you've got to take this thing out and test it under random battle conditions, and so doing that right now, we have Fallen Apart, and he's in a Tier 10 match because this thing does not get premium matchmaking. And he's on the Sand River map. Now, remember this 90mm gun? It only has 212mm of penetration, but it does have very, very good accuracy, 0.32. That 0.32 accuracy means that you stand a decent chance of being able to hit the weak spots of even Tier 10 tanks, providing you can keep them at a good arm's distance away from you, and be able to shoot at them from outside of your own view range. What that means, of course, is that you have to rely on your team to spot the targets for you, and that, well, under ideal circumstances, that would be the way all tank destroyers operate. Unfortunately, this is World of Tanks random battles, and they're very, very rarely ideal circumstances. If you're in a Tier 8 match and you're in a Tier 8 tank destroyer with a reasonable degree of armour like the AT-15, the Jagdtiger 88, the T-28, even the T-28 prototype of the Jagdpanther 2, it's not unusual to see them up near the front of the attack, while not necessarily leading the attack, although sometimes they can do that. They're definitely up there with the heavies. They don't really have to hang around at the back, and in the case of machines like the T-28, they're so slow that you really don't want to be hanging around at the back, because if you do, the fight tends to have moved on before you get the chance to shoot at anything. In a machine like the KanonenPanzer, on the other hand, you absolutely definitely do have to hang around at the back, even in a Tier 8 match, and definitely in a Tier 10 match, because with 30mm of armour, even a high explosive shell is going to penetrate and do full damage. Of course, none of this is unique to the KanonenPanzer. There are plenty of other tank destroyers in the game, not just Tier 8, that do not have particularly good armour. Rheinmetall Balsig, for example, has tissue paper for armour. The ISU 152 is not a particularly well-armoured machine either. And yet people have monster games in these machines. And they have monster games in these machines because you don't need to fire that many shots in a Rheinmetall Balsig or an ISU 152 in order to do a lot of damage. The Balsig by default is equipped with a 128mm gun and can fit a 150mm gun, which, like the ISU 152's BR-10 gun, does 750 alpha damage. It doesn't take many direct hits from guns like this to push you up to the top of the damage dealt charts in the post-battle results screen. The KanonenPanzer, on the other hand, only has a 90mm gun, and it only does 240 damage per shot, and as we've already established, it doesn't fire particularly quickly, so you do have to fire a lot of shots in this thing in order to get an appreciable amount of damage done. Then, of course, you have machines like the AT-15, the Jagdtiger 88, the SU-101, which all have guns that have similar characteristics to this 90mm Rheinmetall DM1 gun. They all do around about 240 damage per shot. They all have broadly similar penetration, accuracy, and aiming times. And they all fire a lot faster than this thing does as well. But that in itself isn't too much of an issue until you take into account the fact that they all have armour and this thing doesn't. Now, when you're in a tank destroyer and you're shooting at targets that are just inside the maximum limit of your view range, you fire at them, you do some damage, they become aware of your existence, they all turn their guns around and start shooting back at you. If you're in a Jagdtiger 88, an AT-15, an SU-101, that's not really too much of a problem because these machines have armour. Sure, they have weak spots, but at ranges of 200, 300, 350 meters, it's very difficult for other tanks to hit those weak spots. The Kanonenpanzer is a weak spot. You get hit anywhere in this thing, and you're going to feel it. So what that means is at the kind of ranges where machines like the AT-15, the Jagdtiger 88, or the Su-101 can quite safely sit detected and still exchange fire with enemy vehicles, while being relatively immune to taking any damage, this thing just can't do it. The second you see a gun turning around to point towards you in this thing, you've got to fall back and get into cover. Which means that, in practice, a machine that already has the lowest DPM of any of the Tier 8 tank destroyers has even worse DPM in practice because it just cannot afford to sit there going toe-to-toe and exchanging fire with anything that knows where it is. You could make the case that this is absolutely no different to the E25, and so if you liked the look of the E25 and you didn't manage to get your hands on it before it was removed from sale, then get yourself a Kanonenpanzer, exactly the same game style. Well, yes and no. Ideally, you didn't want to be trading health with anything in an E25 either, because while the E25 had better armour, believe it or not, than the Kanonenpanzer, 50mm at the front, compared to the 30mm that this thing has, 50mm is still bad. Although, as we explained in the first half of this video, it is actually quite a significant number when it comes to the overmatching mechanics, but still 50mm is bad armour. But the thing about the E25 is that it had such an unbelievable rate of fire that in a lot of cases, when it came down to it, obviously in the ideal circumstances you didn't want to be trading health with anything in an E25, but if you had to do it, a lot of the time you would come off best, purely because the E25 had 2,700 DPM. Depending on what it was you were actually trading health with in an E25, it's not unheard of for an E25 to be able to land 5 or possibly even 6 shots on target for every 1 shot that's coming back in the other direction. The E25 just had that good a rate of fire. You don't get that in the Kanonenpanzer. If you are trading health with anything in this machine, you may win, but you're going to lose a lot of health doing it. And that makes it very, very difficult when you're in this machine to carry a game. If it's going badly, if your team isn't up to scratch, if the enemy team is just outright playing better than your team, it's very, very hard to carry a team of donkeys in a machine like this. Very, very hard, but not impossible. Fallen Apart has not been having a particularly good game up until this point. It's a tier 10 match on Sand River. He's been mostly ineffectual down at the southwestern end of the map. He didn't really have anything to shoot at. The targets that he could see, he couldn't see much of them. They were small, fast moving. He's just run back to defend his base, and now he's spotting the enemy E50M for his artillery. He does not want to get shot at by that guy, and of course lots of artillery on the enemy team. Come on, M53, there it is. Fantastic shot from the M53 Allied artillery, and he is doing absolutely everything he possibly can here to not get hit by the enemy artillery. 3 big artillery on the enemy team, 30mm of armour on this thing. Artillery of that size doesn't even need to hit you to ruin your day in a machine with as little armour as this. Luckily, they've managed to nail the E50M. That guy driving around would have been a significant problem for a machine that only has 212mm of penetration. Hell, even the 250mm penetration high explosive anti-tank ammunition against an angled E50M would have problems. But the E50M's dead. Fallen Apart spotted him, M53 nailed him. Now he's waiting to make sure that the artillery has loaded, and he's going out to poke the hornet's nest and try to find the other 3 enemy artillery. And there's one of them. Unfortunately, he only has a 90mm gun, so he can't one-shot kill this guy. Looking back, checking to see whether or not friendly artillery... Oh, there's another one. He's fired and missed. Come on, M53, take him out, take him out, take him out, take him out, take him out. Come on, fire, 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 fire. There it goes. Bang, got him. Where's the FV207? Some great teamwork going on between these two guys, the tank destroyer and the artillery, talking to each other, working together, making sure the one was ready to fire before the other one moved. Yeah, I know, communication. What's going on? This is not World of Tanks. So where's the FB207? Well, he did just fire, so he's got to be somewhere that isn't in direct line of sight, otherwise they would have seen him, and can hit that spot of the map over there in the corner. And my initial suggestion would have been that he was down there in the low ground, right over there to the right. But close, but no cigar. And this is where the slowish rate of fire of the KanonenPanzer can get you into trouble. This guy is facing in the wrong direction. He gets a free shot into the side, and this guy gets to turn around, spend a couple of seconds aiming, and fire a snapshot off that could have very, very seriously affected the outcome of this match before the KanonenPanzer can reload and finish him off with a second shot. But a win's a win. Not a particularly great game for falling apart, except for the performance at the end, which was pretty good. Some nice teamwork there with the M53. He only did 1600 damage, he did 1100 spot damage, but tier 8 machine, tier 10 match, everything he was shooting at was either the same or higher tier than him, so you do quite well out of it experience-wise. And because it's a tier 8 premium machine, you do quite well out of it as far as credits are concerned as well. Even though he doesn't run a premium account, he still made a 37,000 credit profit in this thing. And just for the sake of science, I decided to put the credit earning potential of this machine to the test. Now, the KanonenPanzer isn't unique in this respect. All tier 8 premium machines have the same money making potential as the KanonenPanzer. But I fired this thing up, I queued up for a random battle, I got into the game, drove about 50 meters forward just outside of the cap circle, and then to all intents and purposes I went AFK. I'm not proud of it, it's not big, it's not strong, and it's not clever, but I did it for the sake of science. I basically shot nothing and detected nothing. And at the end of the game, I still made a 7,000 credit profit. You just don't lose money when you're driving premium tier 8 machines in World of Tanks. So, yeah, okay, it makes a lot of money. Big deal. All tier 8 premiums make a lot of money. And you know what? Tier 8 premiums make a lot more money if they do a lot of damage. So what's the actual damage dealing capabilities like in this thing under ideal circumstances? Well, these aren't exactly ideal circumstances, it's a tier 9 match after all, but showing us how to exploit the superb camo rating of the KanonenPanzer. This is... I don't know how to pronounce his name. It's Svavolnik? I don't know. I'm just going to call him Dave. Dave here in a tier 9 match. And there are a couple of these KanonenPanzers kicking around. There's two on his team, there's one on the enemy team. And he's going to show us how to exploit the superb camo rating of this machine in order to get the most out of it. Now, he's not going to do it at first, but he's pretty much going to have to by the end of this match. So himself and one other KanonenPanzer rushing up front. This is a very, very fast machine, 70 kilometers per hour top speed. And they immediately find enemy light tank. He backs off, expecting to be lit up by tank destroyers at the rear that this guy's spotting for. Nothing happens. First KanonenPanzer rushes in. Now, while one KanonenPanzer might not have a particularly good rate of fire, two of them, particularly when they're backed up by yet another light tank, do. Enemy Walker Bulldog spotted, going for an early spotting position on the far side of the swamp there. His first shot misses, and while this machine does have a fantastic firing arc with that 90mm gun, the Bulldog is just moving too quickly for him to get a second shot off while that guy's still in line of fire. So he moves up. It's a little risky here. He's running the risk of being spotted from the left-hand side. There he is. Doesn't have an awful lot to shoot at. Misses. Goes for the reload. Where's the Bulldog going? Again, doesn't have a massive amount of that guy to shoot at, and then he disappears. This is a weakness of this machine. Poor gun elevation. The barrel will not point up very far, so you can see that when you're on a downward facing slope like this with a target in front of you, like that Jagdpanzer 2, it's practically impossible to get the gun pointed at them. Meanwhile, the Walker Bulldog has popped back up again. Dave has not been spotted yet. He uses that superb firing arc to point the gun right in front of the Walker Bulldog and smack him with one good solid hit, and he is taking an awful risk here. He does manage to hit the Walker Bulldog again, but now of course he has been spotted. He hangs around for one third and final shot, and he doesn't hang around to get the kill. With a Jagdpanther 2 on that opposite ridge over there to the right, and who knows what else on the other side of the swamp. A KanonenPanzer is a big, fat, juicy target. Jagdpanther 2 with its 128mm gun can take a third of your health off or more with one hit. Not worth the risk hanging around in the open, spotted, waiting to take a fourth shot at a Walker Bulldog that was doomed anyway. That bush seems like a popular place to be. Now that cannon panzer was obviously just fired through the bush, which means that, well, if there was any artillery in this game, this bush would be a very, very dangerous place to be. Takes a shot at the second Walker Bulldog on the other side of the railway embankment, but that was never going to hit. And then suddenly, as he's going for the Bulldog, a wild AMX-30 appears, and this is not good. The AMX-30 fires at the targets behind him. He rushes forward to get underneath his gun. One other good factor about the Cannon Panzer is it is an incredibly low-profile machine. You could park a Rheinmetall Borsig next to this thing, and the Borsig would be able to fire over the top of the Cannon Panzer. It is that low to the ground. This is a good thing and a bad thing. It means you can take advantage of concealment that other tanks just would not be able to. On the other hand, it makes it very difficult to see what's on the other side of the ridge, because you don't have a turret that can poke over the top. Now he's taken a hit there, and it's damaged his gun, so he immediately uses his repair kit, the AMX-30, thinks about coming around after him, and then realises, nope, there's another Cannon Panzer over here who very foolishly dived over the top, right into the middle of that lot. He puts a shot into him instead. It comes over. Oh, the AMX-30 is not having a good day. And he's still not pointing his gun. Oh, he's gone. He's gone. Alright. Target, target, target. We'll take out this guy here. The Jagdpanther 2 is pointing this way. He fires and misses. The Jagdpanther 2 has just run out of friends, and it's pretty much all over for this guy. Bingo. He's got him. Onto the enemy base, yeah? Well, no. Although pretty much everybody else is running to the enemy base. But Dave here is paying attention to the map. It's not a popular skill, it does seem to be out of fashion, but Dave appears to be something of a bluff old traditionalist. Their base is about to fall. The enemy base, on the other hand, well, just have a look at the map there. You've potentially got a Jagdpanther 2, a Jagdtiger, possibly a Ferdinand, all sitting on that ridge line, facing back towards the enemy base. And there's an RU-251 out there spotting for them. Those guys that rushed on are never going to cap that enemy base with that kind of reception waiting for them. And so Dave rushes back to defend his base against the oncoming rush from the town up in the northwestern side of the map. And the only other person on his team up here with him is a Jagdpanther 2, who is probably very, very grateful for the assistance, but not entirely sure what kind of good a lone 90mm gun can do. You'd be surprised. Dave here knows a thing or two about World of Tanks concealment mechanics. Now you see them, pull back. Now you don't. It's safe to fire through the bush. You're far enough away that your muzzle blast will not give your position away. If you can't see them, just wait for somebody else on your team to spot them. Or you could move forward, reacquire the targets, move back, bush turns opaque, carry on firing. You can see the IS-3 has absolutely no idea where he's taken fire from. Shot after shot after shot. Easily penetrating the lower glacis of the IS-3. He doesn't have to use premium ammunition for this. There's another one. And again. This is one of those rare circumstances where you are actually able to put the admittedly poor DPM of the Cannon Panzer to effective use. There's the T-44, he's hit again. Multiple layers of concealment between him and the T-44. He can fire through this bush, and the T-44 will not see him. Bingo, there you go. Cap reset. And oh look, everybody who went south to cap the enemy base has been annihilated by hidden tank destroyers while being spotted by an RU-251. What a surprise, said absolutely nobody ever. I don't lay claim to being a particular tactical genius of any kind where World of Tanks is concerned, but that was so obvious even I saw it coming. Heck, John Wayne would have seen that one coming. And he's been dead for 30 years. It's not looking particularly good for our old friend Dave here. Oh, Jagdpanther 2 spotted somebody, and he's dead. Yeah. He got nailed by the Jagdtiger. Oh, now Dave's the only one left alive on his team. I guess we're going to put that camo rating to the test here, aren't we? Let me try it out on this Centurion. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that the Jagdtiger is directly to Dave's left, and I am amazed that he did not get spotted while shooting at this Centurion. But he doesn't. I don't know if the Jagdtiger's moved after killing the Jagdpanther 2. He was out there on the left somewhere, but this Centurion has no idea who's shooting at him. And he's... oh, do you see that ricochet? Bounce. Hit the Centurion's upper plate. Oh, Dave, you're not alone. But he's still not spotted. You can see that these guys... you can see the ones that have sixth sense and the ones that don't. They pop over the embankment. Oh, somebody spotted me. Pull back. Dave's fired so many shots in this tank, he's only got 2 rounds of ammo left. You'll note that the T-49, by the way, died right next to him up there, and that's a light tank that keeps its camo bonus while it's moving. The T-49 got spotted and killed by the RU-251. Dave still hasn't been detected. Now, sure, Dave was probably making better use of camo than the T-49 was, but it does still have a very, very good camo rating. Ferdinand aims for the lower plate, shot seen to go a little bit high, bounced. Ferdinand, obviously aware that somebody's shooting at him, doesn't know who. Second shot penetrates, and Dave has been spotted, and it's all over. There is no way he is going to survive this. He's getting shot from all different sides. Every single shot that hits him is going to penetrate. If these guys were firing high explosive, he would be dead already. He had a good game. He did absolutely everything that he could, but at this point, it's just a matter of time. Ace tanker on a defeat. That's not bad. And 149,000 credits earned, which is pretty damn impressive. He did over 5,500 damage. He actually did 1,200 spotting damage as well. Fired 34 shots, 30 hits, 26 penetrations. As far as the machine itself is concerned, it's actually pretty good. It's very fast, 70 kilometers per hour. The power-to-weight ratio, it's not ridiculously overpowered like on the E25 for example, but it's still pretty damn good at just under 20 horsepower per ton. The traverse speed is very good, 46 degrees per second. It's a very, very maneuverable machine. It's a very low profile machine, and that means it's got a very, very good stealth rating. The only problem is the gun that it's saddled with. Well, the gun and the armour. We're not expecting it to be terribly well armoured, but it's got even less armour than the E25, and with 30mm of armour, that basically means anybody who is firing a gun with a calibre of 91mm or better is going to completely overmatch your armour. And there are an awful lot of 105mm or better guns in tier 8, 9 and 10 battles. And then there's the gun. The thing is, it's not a terrible gun. The accuracy of 0.32 is very good. The aiming time of 2 seconds is pretty good as well. But there's no getting around the fact that you're looking at the tier 8 tank destroyer that has got the lowest DPM of any tier 8 tank destroyer in World of Tanks. And in fact, as we've already seen, it's got significantly lower DPM than any of the premium tier 7 tank destroyers. And it doesn't even have big alpha damage to make up for that fact. It still only does 240 damage per shot, with a distinctly underwhelming 212mm of penetration, and it gets into tier 10 games. So, is this thing worth spending €50 on? Well, if you're looking for a premium German tank destroyer to do crew training for your existing German tank destroyers, it's this or the Digger Max. And this definitely earns more money than the Digger Max. But then again, it comes with its own set of problems because the KanonenJagdpanzer only has 4 crew, which means you can use it to train the crew of, for example, the Rheinmetall Borsig. But every other German tier 8 or higher tank destroyer has 5 or 6 crew. KanonenPanzer only has space for 4, so it's not even that good for training higher tier German tank destroyer crews on. Is this worth spending your money on? Well, only you can answer that question. I show you what the machine's like, I outline its good points, its bad points, you decide, based on what I've shown you, whether or not you think this is the machine for you. Speaking personally, I had to buy this thing in order to do this review of it. If I didn't have to do a review of it, I probably wouldn't have spent my money on it. I have an E25. What would I want one of these things for? On the other hand, if you don't have an E25, and you like the idea of the E25, but you didn't get one in time when it was available for sale, and you want something that performs in a similar way to the E25, then this is probably the machine for you. It's just not as good as the E25. Still, it's not a bad machine. It's just, well, it's not as good as everybody was expecting it to be. Still, it is your money. Spend it wisely. As always, folks, take care out there, and I'll catch you next time. For anybody who's still paying attention at this point of the video, the original plan was to upload this video in 3 sections, trying to keep the file sizes down to less than a gigabyte, because I'd heard reports that YouTube was having problems processing videos with file sizes greater than a gigabyte, and this may have been why some of the videos I've uploaded over the course of the last week have had choppy frame rates. It's all to do with YouTube's video processing software. Well, the experiment was a rousing failure, and that's why this video was uploaded in 2 parts rather than the 3 that it was intended to be. The intro to the video, or the first chapter rather, which consisted purely of all the theory crafting in the garage, weighed in at under 800 megabytes. That got uploaded while I was busy recording the second and third parts of the video. By the time I was about halfway through, it had finished processing. I had a look, and yep, YouTube have screwed it up again, and it's still dropping frames. So I decided it really wasn't worth the bother of continuing the part 2 and then part 3, and so this is why you've gotten the second chapter of the video weighing in at just under, well, in fact now just over 27 minutes. So yep, some of my videos are still dropping frames, some aren't. No idea why. I blame YouTube. Anyway, that's what's going on, and thanks for sticking around this long. Take care. I'll catch you next time.